The Whitbread is the story of hardened athletes, determined adventurers on a deep-water expedition that lasts almost a year. In the world of sports, there is no more demanding, sustained competition than the Whitbread. Each leg of the race lasts from 2 to 4 weeks, and there are 6 legs. With only fractions of minutes separating the boats after racing thousands of miles, the sailors must perform without let-up against time, brutal weather conditions, exhaustion, and depression born of isolation. Living conditions are crowded and uncomfortable. The hard work of racing and repairing the boats is done under the most extreme circumstances. Yet, in its 17-year history, the Whitbread has continued to gain in popularity. Why? Because in this fast-paced, high-tech world, the lure of the sea is stronger than ever for those who wish to test themselves against natural elements. And this test becomes more intense when you're competing against sailors on other boats who share the same goal, to be the first to the finish line. But victory comes in more ways than just winning. Completing this marathon is a reward without equal.
Every time I see footage like that, it gives me chills up my spine. Hi, I'm Gary Jobson. Imagine racing 33,000 miles around the world, sailing on the edge of control for weeks at a time, and living with the same people in cramped quarters and eating sustenance rations. Sailing on and on, being wet and cold for 9 months. Racing in the Whitbread takes all the fortitude a sailor can muster.
The start of the Whitbread is a celebration of sail, as thousands of boats filled with spectators are on the water to watch the fleet start. The anticipation of such a long race fills the stomach with butterflies. No one knows whether exhilaration or trauma lies ahead. After the start in Southampton, England, the fleet will race 6,300 miles south to Punta del Este, Uruguay. Leg 2, the longest and most dangerous, will take the fleet across the Southern Ocean, 7,500 miles to Fremantle, Australia. On this leg, sailors could look forward to freezing cold, huge seas, and winds of 40 to 50 miles per hour, enormous icebergs, and most importantly, high speeds. The reward is arriving in sunny Fremantle, Australia, the town that captured the world's imagination hosting the 1987 America's Cup. From Fremantle, it's a short 3,500-mile sprint to Auckland, New Zealand, a city that proudly calls itself the City of Sails. Leg 4 included a rounding of the infamous Cape Horn during the 6,500-mile trek back to Uruguay. For the first time, the Whitbread fleet would be visiting the United States in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The final leg would be 3,800 miles across the Atlantic to the Solent, where it all began 9 months earlier. Months of design and planning goes into a new Whitbread boat. Preparation has been the key to winning past Whitbread races. Building a boat and tank testing models can consume a year or more. The bottom line of a maxi project for this 5th running of the Whitbread was close to $6 million. It takes about 9 months to construct one of these boats. The sails were also designed by a computer. Finally, the boats were ready for launching, taken to the sea. Some boats like Merit and Fazizi arrived by air for final finishing in England. Christening is always a special time when dreams become reality. In England, the Duchess of York poured with a delicate hand. Leading the list of contenders is Merit, skippered by Pierre Feldman, the man that won the last Whitbread. Merit is a sloop designed by Bruce Farr. But while the Swiss had a lot to celebrate in 1986, this time they will meet their match against the new boat with an innovative 2-mast rig, a ketch. Her name's Steinlager. Skippered by Peter Blake, the only man to have completed all 5 Whitbreads. The Card from Sweden, another powerful ketch, got off to a shaky start when she nearly cut a boat in half during a trial race. The Card had the right of way, but the collision was a serious setback for this team. And it would not be the last of the Card's problems. Fazizi made news as the Soviet Union's first Whitbread entry with a surprising skipper, an American, Skip Novak. Another first was the all-female crew from England aboard Maiden, under the leadership of skipper Tracy Edwards, just 27 years old. Fisher and Paykel, another big catch from New Zealand, was also a contender. Her skipper, Grant Dalton, had sailed as Peter Blake's number 2 in the last race. Rothmans, a maxi sloop from Great Britain, would square off against Merritt. Her skipper was a small boat wizard, Olympian Laurie Smith. Smith could be one of the best tacticians in the race. Liverpool Enterprise was one of the older boats. Her crew was amateur sailors from various walks of life who had paid as much as $15,000 each for the experience of racing in the Whitbread. So the Whitbread fleet comes from 13 nations, including France, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand. Also Spain, Italy, and Finland. The Whitbread scoring system is simple. There are 6 legs, and the overall winner is the boat that sails all 6 legs in the least amount of time. The start of the Whitbread is in Solent, a bay off the south coast of England. On September 2nd, 1989, 4,500 spectator boats were out to watch the action live. Right from the start, 2 of the catches, Fisher and Paykel and Steinlager, took early leads.
We've had some extraordinary sailing. We've filled the cockpits up lots of times. We've had the hatches shut and bolted down. The decks have been covered. The cockpit's flooding right to deck level. I mean, some of the boys are standing there and saying, "Where are the goldfish? I'm in the swimming pool." And here we go. Whammo! It's in the green room. There's just spray everywhere. This thing is just howling down the seas, just like the Southern Ocean is going to be.
But while Steinlager was going fast, Fisher and Paykel broke her mizzenmast, and Rothmans cracked her deck in a big wave. The big question in this Whitbread race is design. 1-mast sloops or 2-mast catches? That would be the big question. The last catch to win was back in 1973, Great Britain 2. At the finish of the first leg, it was Steinlager leading the way. 11 hours later, it was the sloop, Merritt. The second leg would take the boats into the Southern Ocean, where the wind whips around the globe unimpeded by land masses, and the boats would sail close to the dangerous Antarctic ice pack. At the start, on October 28th, it was deceptively calm. Things would be different. This is the Southern Ocean, a hostile body of water between Antarctica and Africa. The prevailing westerlies come from astern, and when it's blowing between 40 and 50 miles per hour and you're sailing at 20 knots under spinnaker, you're living on the edge of disaster for days on end. And it's freezing cold. Dressed in many layers of protective clothing and clipped to the boat by safety harness, it's difficult to move on the pitching deck. And the course is strewn with massive icebergs. Yet the sailing is unique and exhilarating. Racing in the Southern Ocean is the very essence of the Whitbread race. One boat, Fortuna from Spain, broke a record sailing 405 miles in one 24-hour period. And in these kind of conditions, the equipment is brittle, but the ride is worth it. In spite of all the ice, these sailors love it.
Here we are, Southern Ocean, dripping stuff this is. Roaring 40s into the 50s. Here we go again. Whoa, 25 knots, how is that? I think we're going quite well.
And when you're 2,000 miles from land, there's no place to go to get warm.
My hands froze to the wheel. I was feeling nauseous. I was feeling faint. I felt myself toward the end of my hour shift, chilling from the inside with each breath that I took. I was cooling from the inside out. I could feel that. It was actually sort of a frightening feeling. And when my time was over, I had to have some guy unclip me because my fingers were incapable of doing it.
Makes you wonder, why do these sailors do it?
I feel that this kind of ocean racing is quite stupid. Third time here, I don't actually know what I'm doing here anymore. But I don't think you should do it so many times. I think once should be enough. But everybody that is down here says it all the time, but the next time they come here again.
But after all that sailing, once again it was the big red catch, Steinlager getting the gun. Peter Blake collected his second Beefeater trophy. Meanwhile, Rothmans and Merritt were separated by only feet. Rothmans won the battle, but just 28 seconds was the difference. Leg 3 took the boats from Fremantle to Auckland, New Zealand. On December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, the fleet got off, but in rainy, cold weather, unusual for Australia. Merritt led at the first mark. However, the catches got going on a reach leg when the wind is coming from the side, and the mighty Steinlager hit 28 miles per hour on this surge. Charles Jourdain, the French boat, hit a whale, or maybe vice versa. They patched it up using duct tape. And Union Bank of Finland broke her mast, but she sailed the last 400 miles with 30 feet of spar. It was a valiant effort. Sailing into Auckland, Steinlager and Fisher and Paykel were only about 10 boat lengths apart. Then a sudden squall came, and Steinlager took the lead, as Fisher and Paykel had some trouble with their sails. Yet, only 6 minutes separated the boats. It was a big day in New Zealand. 1 hour after that, once again it was Merritt and Rothmans. This time Merritt was in the lead. The fourth leg would take the boats past infamous Cape Horn, the windiest point in the world, and back to Punta del Este. The wind was light at the start, and over 10,000 boats were on hand to watch the action. But for the racing boats, it was difficult working their way through the maze, and the card had more problem than most. On board Kazisi, life was difficult.
Well, we're hoping we're going to get stuck into more breeze as we go further south. We're going to probably get down to 55, 56, and then start thinking of turning due east.
Life magazine, Roger Vaughn was on board.
On a couple of my wheel watches yesterday, the boat hit 17 knots, and I suddenly understood why I'm here. There's nothing like it. It's an 82-footer that handles like a dinghy.
In spite of all the hardship, Vaughn enjoyed his ride, although down below it was difficult.
It's a strange boat. Living on it is cruel and unusual punishment. I'd like to find those young Leningrad designers who designed it.
Vaughn's biggest thrill was steering the boat at 20 miles per hour down giant waves. But in spite of such hardship, there was time for a little humor. Here's a puppet show. Uh-oh, look out, here comes the monster puppet. Look out, guys, it's Mr. Bill. And if you needed to stay warm, well, the penguin strut would do the trick. On board Maiden, Tracy Edwards had something to prove.
When you're knee-high to a grasshopper, if you're a woman, you're told you have to look like this, be like that, you have to use this, use that, you can't have spots, you can't have this, you have to wear the right things. Go to the Southern Ocean, you spend 28 days, you don't have to wash, you don't have to dress properly, you don't have to do your hair. It's great. We loved it.
There were torn sails and all kinds of problems on these boats. The equipment was brittle, particularly in the snow. But Maiden kept their spirits alive.
And the crew is going absolutely stark raving bonkers.
At Cape Horn, the winds were strong, and Fisher and Paykel was covered with water. Remember, this is an 84-foot boat. And then word was received by the fleet that one boat, Martello of Finland, had its keel fall off. So Charles Jourdain, and the Swiss boat Merit went to the rescue. It was a sobering sight. But in a way, Martella's crew was lucky. The wind was moderate, she turned over in daylight, and 2 race boats were close to her. Martella's crew was prepared for the disaster. Nevertheless, it was a frightening experience.
It was mostly disbelief. No one could really believe this was happening to us. We were prepared for it, but no one really believed it was going to happen. Even when it did happen, it took a long time before we actually could accept that it happening. It happened so quickly, we didn't really think about it at all. It was about 15 seconds from upright to completely upside down. So it was reaction rather than thinking. It was like a car accident.
After the crew was rescued, Martella was left behind. Maiden was also having her problems. A huge wave knocked down the helmswoman during a gale. She injured her back and broke the steering wheel. A bad leak developed that damaged equipment. Maiden's crew was exhausted from its ordeal.
Basically, it took us 24 hours to pump the water out as fast as we could pump out. The water was pouring in. It's a little bit scary.
Yeah, well, it just happened to be right after Martella's keel fell off. So, of course, that was right in the back of our mind. But it all worked out. The only lasting problem from that was that we got water on the engine and the generator and the water maker. So we got a lot of electrical shorts and things that we had to clear up for the next few days.
There were no big surprises at the finish of leg 4. Once again, it was the big red catch, Steinlager. Leg 5 started in light air under spinnaker. From Uruguay, the fleet would bend around the bulge of Brazil and sail the Caribbean trades to Florida, passing through the doldrums. When all else fails, the sailors look for rain squalls and try to sail into them. With the rain comes the breeze, at least hopefully. And if there's no breeze, well, at least you can take a shower. But the rain does bring relief from the heat. And when there's no wind at all, it's time to clean the bottom, as this crew did aboard Gatorade. And this aspiring Superman went for a fly. This guy preferred hamburgers. And maybe swimming to Florida would be faster. Look out below! And one artist and writer created this book of some of the sights he saw along the way. Once again, it was Steinlager leading the way and taking leg 5. The final leg started in Fort Lauderdale and raced 3,800 miles across the Atlantic to England, where it all started 9 months earlier. At the start in Fort Lauderdale, there were 2,000 spectator boats out. I was aboard Steinlager to find out how fast this boat really was in light air. Also, in the next several minutes, by being on board Steinlager, we're going to find out what makes this crew tick. Blake and his tactician discussed strategy. The idea was to go for a conservative start. But Blake's competitive instincts took over, and he went for it. He was in the front row as the boats left Lauderdale. After 8 miles of sailing, Steinlager was back in the lead. Well, it's time to take off for me. Peter's already in the lead. He's in good shape. Glad to help out, but for me, it's time to go.
For Christ's sake, go!
But crossing the Atlantic wasn't all smooth sailing. The storm clouds were ominous, and the wind got rough. The British boat Sackboat broke her mast and had to sail 2,700 miles with very little sail area, but they made it. Aboard Fisher and Paykel, the main pulled away from the mast and had to be sewn up. They also had a mizzen problem and had to make repairs. Aboard Steinlager, they too had a mizzen problem and almost lost their rig. It could have been a disaster. but both boats stayed together. Steinlager and Fisher and Peichel were spectacular at the finish, racing within a half a mile of each other as if sailing to a choreographed routine. In the light air, the two approached the Needles, with Steinlager, as usual, clinging to a slim lead. Blake said he called for reef several times toward the end, and his crew ignored him. They wouldn't be denied their sweep of the Whitbread. Finally, it was glory time, with Steinlager still racing, escorted to the finish by overeager spectators. The bowman got ready to trip away the spinnaker. And there it was, a record-setting sweep of all 6 legs. Blake, a happy sailor, raised his trophy for first in the fleet. 36 minutes later, it was Fisher and Peichel. Grant Dalton had sailed well. And then Merritt in 3rd place, followed by Rothmans finishing in light air. Next in, Picard. Then came Harry Harkemo aboard Belmont. We'll see him again. And then Fasizi. The Russians had sailed well. They'd come a long way in 1 year. The champagne flowed like water. Equity and Law was first in their class. And then NCB Ireland. There was hugs and kisses all around. Next was Gatorade from Italy. And then Charles Jourdain. They missed the whales, but dropped back in the standings after the leg 6. Liverpool's amateurs were high on their accomplishment. As Maiden neared England, excitement built both on board and ashore. But for one boat, the problems weren't over. Rockin' Sport ran aground 5 miles from the finish in strong current. The partisan crowd was ready to cheer its brave women sailors. In clean uniform, the crew awaited the gun.
Just coming in and seeing all these people, they're all just spilled out. I hope that this has done a lot for British yachting, and I hope it's done a lot for women sailors and men sailors and everyone, and I hope everyone feels good about Maiden and what we've done, because we feel great.
For Sackquote, they've been a very long leg, 2,700 miles under jury rig. They deserved a medal. So after 33,000 miles of sailing, Steinlager wins by 36 hours over Fisher and Peichel. Class C and D, Equity and Law beat L'Esprit by 16 days. And in the cruiser class, Crichton naturally was first.